All right, now let's see how we can read text files. So just like before, first we need to include the fstream header file. Now in our main function, we need an input stream. We can either use ifstream or fstream if we need both the reading and writing capability. I'm going to go with ifstream because we just want to read a file in this lesson. So we're going to call this object file. Then just like before, we call file.open and pass our file name. Next, we check to see if the file was successfully opened. Now over here, we can use the stream extraction operator to read something from our file, or we can use getLine. Let me show you the differences. So first I'm going to declare a string, let's call that str, and read something using the extraction operator. Now just like before, we should always remember to close this file. Now let's print the str on the terminal and see what we get. So take a look. So we get the first row, which is our header row. So the stream extraction operator reads all the characters until it finds a delimiter. The delimiter can be white space or \n, which represents a new line. So that means if we go back to our CSV file and put a space somewhere here and run the program again, this is what we get. We don't get the entire row because the white space is used as a delimiter. So this is where we use the getLine function. So we replace this with getLine, pass our input stream, which is file, and our string variable. Now take a look. So we see the entire header row. So the getLine function reads all the characters until it finds \n. Okay, that is better. Now let me fix this issue. Good. So we read the header row, then we need to read all the movie rows. But how do we know how many rows we should read? Well, we have a method here called EOF, which is short for end of file. This returns true if you're currently at the end of the file. So here we can write a while statement and say, while we haven't reached the end of the file, then we're going to continuously read line by line. So one more time, in this while loop, we're going to have getLine, and I want to put cout over here so we can see each line on the terminal. Now let's run the program and see what we get. Now we see both our movie records, but they're on the same line because I didn't use endl here. Now let's run it one more time. Okay, that's better. But how can we extract these pieces of data? Well, getLine has a third parameter, which is called delimiter. If we don't specify anything, as I told you, by default, \n is used. But here we can pass a comma, and this will read all the characters until it finds a comma. So now if we run the program, look what we get. We get each piece of data on a new line. So we have the ID of the movie, its title, release year, and so on. So to make this more real life, let's define a movie structure and store all these pieces of information in a movie object. So on the top, I'm going to define a structure called movie with 3 members: integer ID, string title, and integer year. Now back to our while loop. So the first time we call getLine, we read all the characters until we find a comma. So we read the ID of the movie. So here we create a movie object and set movie.id to str. Now str is a string, and here we have an integer, so we have to convert it using stoi. We talked about this before, right? So we read the ID of the movie. Now if we call getLine again, next we'll read all the other characters until we find a comma, so we can read the title of the movie. So over here we set movie.title to str. So str is just a temporary variable that we are using to read each piece of data. Okay. Now if you repeat this one more time, we're going to read all the other characters until we find a comma. But on this line, we don't have a comma after the release year, we have \n. So we should remove the delimiter and rely on the default implementation to look for the new line. And then we can set movie.year to, again, we need to convert our string to an integer. Okay, so here we have a movie object. Now, let's print movie, the title, on the terminal. Let's run the program and see what happens. All right, our program crashed with an uncaught exception. Let's run the program in debug mode and see what exactly is happening. So I'm going to put a breakpoint on this line and then start the program in debug mode. The shortcut is Control and D. So let's start this. Okay, so look, in the first iteration of our while loop, we have this movie object. We can see the ID, the title, and the year. So all these values have been extracted successfully. Now we can click on this icon that is called Resume Program. Again, all IDEs have this feature. So if we click on this, the execution continues until we reach this breakpoint again. So let's do that one more time. So now we are in the second iteration. Look at our second movie. We can see the ID, the title, and the release year. Beautiful. Now from this point, I want to execute this code line by line and see why our program crashed. So we don't need this window. Let's run this code line by line. So now we are in the third iteration. So there is still one more line to read, and that is this line over here. So because when writing to this file, we always added a \n at the end, we ended up writing an extra line at the end of this file. But this extra line is an empty line. There is nothing here. So back to the code. Let's step over this line and look at the content of str. So str is an empty string. So before we create a movie object and set its members, we should check to see if str is empty. If so, we should continue to the next iteration. So let's stop the debugger. And over here, we can check to see if str is empty. Then we're going to continue. Now in the next iteration, we have reached the end of the file, so our while loop will terminate. Now, if we run the program one more time, no more errors. We see both our movies. Beautiful.